Well, we're finally back at the boat. As you saw, last week was kind of a write-off for boat work, but when we left the week before that, we discovered that there was a bunch of rust under the winch, the aft winch on the starboard side. So the task for today is to deal with that, pull the winch off, probably start figuring out how we're gonna replace that bit of plate, because it's looking pretty bad. I mean, I haven't gotten all the way into it yet, so I'm not 100% that we'll have to replace it, but so far that's what it's looking like. The forward winch we haven't even had a chance to look at yet, so we're gonna have to dig up more foam and check that out. And then otherwise all the hardware is off and ready to be welded. But it's snowing outside, which means that it's below zero, it's cold, and we've run out of fuel for the heater. So we don't want to open the tent up and get a bunch of cold air in here and freeze our butts off today, so we're probably not going to do any welding today. I'm Taryn, this is Logan, and this is Max. Our life rarely goes as planned, and this story is no different. But we are determined to rebuild our beautiful steel boat, even stronger than she was before. And we're bringing you along with us. This is the first winch that we got to take off. It's the only one of 3 so far that we've looked at that's actually had rust issues, so that's not too bad. But you can see kind of all around the base there that there's bubbling going on. That right there is right under the winch, and that's, you can see all the rust. So we haven't got the bolts off, so you can't even tell how much rust is actually under the bolts, but there is a lot flaking off. So I think that we're gonna have to replace some there, but there's a slight chance I'm wrong, but not a very big one. Right there, that is where we pulled the radio thingy out, so that's got to have a patch welded in. It's a little bit rusty, but not too bad. And there's actually a little bit of rust up in this corner too. I'm not sure what that's from, maybe from the cleat. So yeah, definitely more rust on this side, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Tripod just broke, look at that. How annoying.
Okay, so there's the base. These are super nice little winches. Like they're
Bronze.
You can take them apart with a Phillips screwdriver. Well, it doesn't look bad on this side of things. Like it's definitely bubbled up right here, and it might be. Not that bad. I think there's only one really bad spot in here. So we may be able to clean that one up.
Well, unfortunately, it's as bad as it initially looked before we pulled the winch off. There's a ton of rust there. It looks like they had a couple of other holes drilled that they didn't put a new bolt through. They just filled them with epoxy. So I'm sure I've said this a few times already, but if you have a steel boat, do not fill holes with epoxy and then paint over top of them, because it just turns into rust. You gotta weld them shut. Or at minimum, stick a bolt through it and fill it with some kind of proper sealant, because epoxy just rusts. It looks like there's even more epoxy bolt holes behind where the aft winch was, as well as some other rust spots, so I gotta take even more spray foam out of the literal most difficult part in this entire boat to pull spray foam out of. Yeah. Please, I beg of you, if you own a steel boat, Do not epoxy the freaking holes. Don't do it. Just freaking don't. And that's my PSA for today. Okay, going back to work. Alright, so I have all the bolts exposed for that other winch, and luckily there's only one of them showing any rust, and it looks very, very minimal. So we're gonna pull that winch and rebed it, but we shouldn't have to do nearly as much work to it, so that's awesome. Very, very, very good news. Well, this video is going to be an absolute roller coaster of decision-making changes. After pulling off both of the winches on the starboard side and taking a better look at that aft one that has all the rust, we've determined that we don't actually need to cut a plate out to replace. We're just going to weld the holes shut and clean it up really well, because even with all the flaking that's gone on, it's actually not taking back that much metal, and there's quite a bit left. And the areas that are the worst are not really a structural issue. They're going to be underneath the winch and not near where the bolts are going through, so it shouldn't really impact anything, and we should be able to stop the rust, which is the main thing. So that's the current plan for that, which is awesome, because that's going to save us a ton of time and energy and safety stress. But the other thing that we've decided is that we're going to pull the winches off of the port side that we weren't going to originally pull off, just because they've been coming off so easily. And that way we can pull them off, we can do some modifications to the bases that they're sitting on so that water drains better, and we can rebed them, repaint underneath, and just make sure that everything's really, really good to go. And it's going to save time for painting by pulling them off, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to hop down into the locker on the port side, finish pulling out the foam around all of the bolts, and then we will take those winches off. Fun, fun times for us. Well, we got the other two winches off and found a little bit of weird stuff, but for the most part they're looking pretty good. And Logan's taking the last of the thingies off in the cockpit. That guy. This is what the winches look like now. Obviously the two of them. This one also has a bunch of mystery bolt holes. Those guys. But they don't have a bunch of rust under them, so go figure. And there's another weird thing, is that under this one and under this one, you can see it even better here, there is water in between the silicone and the paint. No rust, but water. So, I don't know, weird. Those will have to be cleaned up, but there won't be much work to be done on them. Repaint, and then we'll reinstall them. Well, that's where the winches are right now, in a nice little pile. So today we're going to try to do all the welding that needs to be done on the starboard side of the cockpit, and I guess fill those extra little holes that we found underneath the one winch on the port side. So to do that, I've got to get in there and clean around each of the holes that's going to be welded and kind of prep it for welding so that we don't get a bunch of crap in the welds. And then we've got to actually get the welder back up on the boat again, which, as you guys know, is a fiasco every time. We've got Marty back here again. He's going to continue to help us out with getting little projects done, which is awesome and such a help. Yeah, that's the game plan. all the holes in the cockpit filled. All we have to do as far as welding goes is welding on the cleats, the fair leads, and changing the drain, but that's all the holes. So that ended up being quite a bit more work than we thought it was going to be because we had to take the winches off, and then we found more holes under the winches, blah 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 blah. It wasn't a ton more, it was only about a day's more worth of work, and now all of the holes that we don't want are filled properly with weld instead of epoxy. So there shouldn't be a rust issue as long as I can properly prep the steel for paint. That's the key now. Feels really good to have all those holes filled, and the cockpit looks so weird. I'm going to show you guys. Look how naked she is. There's nothing, well, Logan's stuff, but I mean, there's no winches. There's no anything on anything here. There's nothing down there. The pedestal's obviously off again. So, yeah, weird, but cool to know that we're actually moving forward still. Well, I thought we were done with the holes, but guess what? I was wrong! We found 5 more! Let me show you. Starboard side, you can see that one was filled, and then there's 1 hole, 2 hole. Then over on the port side, we have 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole. And I'm sure you're wondering, how did we discover these lovely holes? These wonderful little pieces of rust collectors? Well, the answer is because there was rust underneath when I was peeling foam back to clean everything to get it ready for paint. Yay! And I thought, well, we thought, if there's 2 more holes on this side, there's probably the same amount on the other side. So guess what I did? I went onto the other side and I started smacking it with a hammer, and lo and behold, more holes! How exciting! Right? Yay! So I get to peel back more foam in that locker, and we get to weld more stuff on this side and that side. Great times. Just great. Yeah. It's way back in the corner. And that is way back in the corner, as you can see. So, yay. Alright, hopefully this is for real the last holes to be filled. Fingers crossed.
This is a bunch of junk that I hacked together.
Why, Logan? Why?
No, these are our cleats.
Yeah. And then that right there is a fair lead welded on. So that means that all the stuff that was bolted through is now welded onto the deck. Or onto the cockpit, or whatever. I mean, it's just all welded, is the point. So that means that we're going to have a lot less potential for rust going forward, and that we've got strong equipment that hopefully won't break because it'll be made of stainless instead of being made of plastic. So it's very exciting. I feel very good about today. I'm very stoked on today, and so is Logan, but he's just really tired.
Woo.
Woo! Woo! That's this week's video. Thanks for joining us, guys, and extra thank you to our patrons. We'll see you next week. Bye. Bye.